Good evening. It's May the 13th. It's Saturday night. And normally I don't do anything on a Saturday, but I wanted to just, frat brother of mine, Vincent Player, had asked me to do something on Adam Clayton Powell, do a session on Adam Clayton Powell, and always do what people ask, especially when it comes to our history, and especially when it comes to reading our history. So I'm going to go back, and this weekend is pretty significant because this weekend, on the 15th of May in 1954, the Supreme Court ruled that separate but unequal was inherently unequal. But in 1955, Adam Clayton Powell, who I think was the greatest legislator who ever happened upon the House of Representatives, no matter his color. He represented Harlem in the 1950s, 1960s. Harlem was a rambunctious community with so much talent, and Adam Clayton Powell was the voice of that community. His autobiography, one of his autobiographies, is named Adam Clayton Powell, King of the Cats, and he truly was king of the cats. He was a big cat. Adam Clayton Powell stood up against adversity in color and protection of black rights. On February 2nd, 1955, Adam Clayton Powell was in the U.S. Congress, and he rose to speak to those colleagues who were planning to consider two pending civil rights bills before the House of Representatives. And he gave those representatives something to think about that day. In his words, my voice, Adam Clayton Powell. Mr. Speaker, the United States Congress is a 19th century body in a 20th century world. In the field of civil rights, we are still conducting ourselves along the pattern of yesterday's world. Tremendous changes are taking place in our country, eradicating the concept of second-class citizen, yet the United States Congress has done absolutely nothing in this sphere. We are behind the times. We are a legislative anachronism. In an age of atomic energy, our dynamic is no more powerful than a watermill. The executive and judicial branches of our government have passed us by so completely and are so far ahead that the peoples of our nation do not even look to the U.S. Congress any longer for dynamic leadership in the field of making democracy real. So many changes, tremendous changes have taken place under our Supreme Court and under the leadership of President Eisenhower that many of the civil rights bills which I used to introduce are no longer of any value. This year, for instance, I did not introduce the bill to abolish segregation in the armed forces. It wasn't needed. Nor did I introduce the bill to guarantee civil rights in the District of Columbia. It was not needed. I think it is highly significant to point out that the appointment of my distinguished colleagues, Representatives Charles Diggs of Detroit, Michigan, and Dawson of Chicago, Illinois, to the Veterans Affairs Committee and to the District of Columbia Committee, respectively, was due entirely to the changing climate of America. 2 years ago, the leadership of this House, Republican or Democrat, would not have dared to place a Negro on either of these two committees because both were committees which dealt with segregation. Our Veterans Administration rigidly maintained the bars of segregation, especially in our veterans' hospitals. 2 years ago, this capital was a cesspool of democracy where not only I, as a congressman, was banned from public places, but also visiting chiefs of state and their representatives if their skin happened to be dark. But under the vigorous leadership of H.V. Higley, administrator of the Veterans Affairs, there is no longer any segregation in any of the veterans' hospitals. And under the leadership of District Commissioner Samuel Spencer from Mississippi, if you please, this capital has become a glorious place, truly representative of the finest of our American way of life. And again, I repeat, all of this was done without the help of the U.S. Congress, and oftentimes done in spite of opposition of the Congress. For 10 years, my colleagues and I have introduced Civil Rights Amendment after amendment, Civil Rights Bill after bill, pleading, praying that you good ladies and gentlemen would give to this body the glory of dynamic leadership that it should have. But you have failed, and history has recorded it. I am proud to be a member of the Congress of the United States. I am proud to be a member of the legislative branch of the United States government. I know you are too, but I beseech you to transform this emotion of pride into the deed of leadership. This is an hour for boldness. This is an hour when a world breathlessly waits expectantly, almost hungrily, for this Congress, the 84th Congress, through legislation to give some semblance of democracy in action. Our President and our Supreme Court cannot do all of this by themselves, and furthermore, we should not expect it. We are derelict in our duty if we continue to plow forward backwards. No man is fit for this new world, for this new kingdom of God on earth, who plows looking backward, and is coming with or without us. You see, time is running out, ladies and gentlemen. Asia has almost slipped from our grasp, and Africa will be next. There is no guarantee of our position in Europe. Only a resolute three-pronged drive can make democracy live, breathe, and move on. Only legislative, judicial, and executive action can completely guarantee the victory of the free world. The legislative branch of this Congress must immediately change its childish, immature, compromising 19th century attitude and not just become a part of the 20th century world, but become the leader of that world. Therefore, I ask all of you on both sides to support this year the bill to eradicate segregation in interstate transportation, to support the omnibus civil rights bill offered by Representative Emanuel Seller, chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Prompt hearings on these bills should be held immediately, and swift passage with a minimum of friction should be brought about. We should have a bipartisan approach to domestic democracy, or our bipartisan foreign policy approach will be utterly meaningless. The Fair Employment Opportunities Bill did languish in the Committee on Education and Labor, of which I'm a member, under the chairmanship of both the Republican and Democratic leaders, and that it should be immediately considered for passage. The opponents of a Fair Employment Opportunities Bill state that they do not believe that the federal government should intrude in states' rights. I do not agree with them, but until such time as we pass a National Federal Employment Opportunities Act, I am introducing today an FEPC bill for the District of Columbia. There can be no argument of the violation of states' rights now. An FEPC bill for the District of Columbia would automatically allow this Congress to become a part of the glorious, victorious forward march of our executive and judicial branches in the District of Columbia. We who believe in civil rights urge first unity of thought and action for the passage of an interstate anti-segregation bill to ban segregation on all interstate carriers. This bill has been introduced by a gentleman from Massachusetts, Representative Hazelton. I have also introduced a companion bill. Last year, when the House Committee on Interstate and Foreign Commerce was considering legislation to end segregation in interstate travel, a 29-year-old witness appeared. He was Lieutenant Thomas Williams, formerly of the United States Air Force. You see, Lieutenant Williams had volunteered for duty when he was 19 years old. He served in the Air Force with merit until 1953, when he was dropped following his arrest in the state of Florida because he refused to move from a so-called white section of an interstate bus. That young man in the uniform of his country was jailed and fined, even though the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, had told carriers to end all racial segregation. That case is still before the courts on appeal, and after he was dropped by the United States Army, Lieutenant Williams was so eager to serve his country, he enlisted in the New Jersey National Guard. He served for nearly a year. About 2 weeks ago, while flying a jet plane, he was killed serving his country before he had a chance to see democracy come to pass. We believe, in the second place, in unity of thought and action towards the passage of an omnibus civil rights bill. We believe, in the third place, in the unity of thought and action for the passage of a thorough and action for the passage of a fair employment opportunity act. I would like to serve notice that some of us intend, after a reasonable time of waiting for our committees and our committee chairman to act, to use every parliamentary device we can to bring before this Congress civil rights bills of worth and value. We intend to use, after a reasonable period of time, calendar Wednesdays and discharge petitions. I trust that the leadership will give us cooperation and that we will not be stymied by the use of counter-parliamentary methods to prevent us from bringing calendar Wednesday forward. You see, on this day when we bow our heads and hearts in the memory of the greatest human beings that ever lived, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, we may not use some of the breath of his greatness in our hearts and mind, realizing those great words of his that we have nothing to fear. So let us be strong. We are not here to play, to dream, to drift. We have hard work to do, loads of life. Shun not the struggle that is God's gift. Be strong. It matters not how deep entrenched the wrong, nor how hard the battle goes, nor the night how long. Faint night, fight on. Tomorrow will come the dawn. That's Adam Clayton Powell. Adam Clayton Powell, keep the faith, baby. Adam Clayton Powell, Black Power. Adam Clayton Powell, you want my dollar? Respect me as a man. Adam Clayton Powell, one of the greatest Black Americans, one of the greatest Americans who was ever born. Adam Clayton Powell fought every day of his life for Black power, for Black values, for Black respect, for Black manhood, Black womanhood, for the education of the Blacks, for the civil rights of the Blacks. Adam Clayton Powell, a great man, a great minister of God, a great legislator, a great bill maker, a great leader. I remember him tonight, this Saturday, May the 13th, and I do this presentation in honor of Vincent Player, my fraternity brother. Hey Vince, let us be strong. We are not here to play, to dream, to drift. We have hard work to do, loads to life. Shun not the struggle that is God's gift. Be strong. It matters not how deep entrenched the wrong, nor how long the battle goes, nor the night how long. Faint night, fight on. Tomorrow will come the dawn.